Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our Friday panel on potential trademark troubles for the strong and free license plate. But first, the road forward for teachers.
So when we looked at all of our options, this has been the longest education strike in Canadian history. We were looking for a way to bring some finality to it.
Alberta's finance minister defending the government's legislation forcing teachers back to work and imposing a previously rejected deal, legislation that invokes the Charter's notwithstanding clause. And joining us now to weigh this week of developments is Jason Schilling, president of the Alberta Teachers Association. Mr. Schilling, appreciate you coming in and chatting after
Thank you for having
after
me.
Quite a week.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, how would you describe the mindset of teachers at the moment?
Well, I think Monday night when you saw the suspension of the rules of how they would normally push legislation through the legislature to get it done in one night, and then to invoke the notwithstanding clause and impose a settlement on teachers, was deeply disrespectful, extremely frustrating, and left teachers that night feeling demoralized. I was in the gallery with teachers that evening as we watched this get tabled, and they were in tears over the fact that, their concerns, the issues that they have raised, the time that they'd put into the strike to make people understand the seriousness of the issue was just dismissed by government in a way that was an act of cowardice to just sort of table this bill, say it's over and done with, and we're going to move on.
Is your fight over?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so where have you landed on a potential legal challenge?
So we're looking at the bill. Obviously, we've just had it for a couple of days at this point, so we're doing some analysis work on that, and we will be pursuing legal challenges. We've heard from a variety of different lawyers from across the country who are also interested in this case, because this case now, with the use of the notwithstanding clause, is bigger than teachers. This will affect every worker who's unionized within the province, who's not unionized, and does also affects across Canada the impact of that. So if we have governments that are now going to so easily use a notwithstanding clause to get themselves out of situations that they find themselves in, then that's a bigger question for the rest of us as citizens of Alberta and of Canada as well.
Was there a way forward that the teachers would have been open to in returning to classes and continue bargaining without the government having taken this action?
There's always other options, and they had other options that they could have, even if they legislated us back, they could have done binding arbitration, for example.
They could have been open to that.
Well, we would have been open to having a conversation where it wasn't, I've heard government talk about the enhanced mediation and that we just turned it down. But the rules that they wanted to have going into enhanced mediation was we're not going to talk about some of the issues that you have. We just want to talk about the things that we want to talk about. So if you're going to go into arbitration, we want it to be unfettered so that everything could still be on the table so that you could still have those conversations. So, you would have conversations and negotiate a little bit about what that looks like, but ideally a negotiated settlement would have been what we wanted to see and what we were pushing towards. We weren't necessarily, this is not the outcome that teachers would want it to have had.
Students struck out on their own on Thursday, protesting at a number of locations, a number of schools, the legislature included. How do you feel about that? And is that something the ATA supports?
Well, it's not anything that we organized. We didn't encourage the student walkout. We have nothing to do with that. I just want to put that out there because I've seen a lot of rumors online that suggested that we did that, and that's just simply not true. Students are the ones who are in our classrooms that are overcrowded. They're the ones who don't have the resources that they need to learn. Their voice is just as important in this conversation as anybody's voice. Our voice as teachers, parents' voices, government's voices. Often, we talk about this is for the students, but sometimes I feel like people often ignore the student voice. And they've organized themselves into saying that we have some thoughts and some ideas around this, and that we too are not happy with the situation that's happening in our schools. They see it because they live it, and they should have opportunities to express it as well.
A coalition of unions also pledging action in response to this week's developments. And in the words of the AFL's Gil McGowan, their motivation is to topple this government. How does the ATA fit into that equation? You were at their news conference on Wednesday afternoon.
So the association meets regularly with the Common Front, with other unions, to talk about this. We'll have to all work together to coordinate pushing back on government for the use of the notwithstanding clause in this regard. Because like I said before, it's going to affect negotiations with every public sector union that is out there. And we still have other unions that are in the negotiation process right now with AUPE, with QP, with HSA. I mean, those unions are still out there. And so if they're going to use it on us because they are in a tricky situation that they want to get out of, they will use it on others. And we're on a slippery slope now. And so we'll have to just keep working and coordinating as unions across the province in a response.
How do you weigh the value of the support of the other unions, the support that they're committing to? What do you see that accomplishing where teachers are concerned?
Well, I think when we work together, we all rise together, right? When unions and unionized workers are supported within their communities, the communities are supported as well, because these are public sector workers who are doing work for the greater good of the public, healthcare, education. But it also affects private unions as well, because it also gives employers bad ideas. It seems like bad ideas sometimes spread a lot quicker than the good ideas. And so we want to make sure that we're in a situation when you're bargaining that it's done in good faith, that you're following the rules and the procedures around that so that you're getting to a deal that both parties can accept and not have such draconian sort of response that you saw by this government on Monday.
In terms of government response and in terms of moving forward, there is now a commitment to reinstating the counting and public reporting of class sizes. How far does that action, as a follow-up to the strike, how far does that go in addressing the concerns that you brought to the table around class size, around class complexity? Well,
as our concerns have been raised around class size and complexity, we didn't have the data from government, and we're collecting it up till October 2019 is when they stopped collecting this information. So now that they're going to do that again is something that we've been pushing for years. So I'm glad to see that they're actually going to do that. I saw the press release of them yesterday, and just the length of the data that they're collecting. There'll be some overlaps in terms of students with IPPs and severe needs, for example. But it's good for us to have that data, and we need to make sure that they are releasing it publicly. So when they say we're going to release it on this date, then I fully expect that's the date it's going to be released and not be delayed, and that it is fulsome and that public can see it.
And is that how much of a window is that for the ATA to work with the government and improve that situation?
No, we'll definitely work with them on that to make sure that the information is there. And then it's information that we can use in terms of our own policy at the association, and then looking at, how this will inform, the Premier's also announced a task force around classroom complexity. And so in order for that group to do its work, they need this data. But I'll tell you right now, any teacher across this province can tell them what that data is going to tell them today.
All right. We started this conversation about the mindset of teachers at the moment, and this has been a stressful time for all involved. How worried are you about teachers walking away from your profession? Those who have maybe had enough.
Yeah, we've been worried about teacher retention and recruitment for years now, because we're already in.
Is this a tipping point?
It could be for a lot of my colleagues, and I understand that, and they're rightfully so angry about this, and they should be, because they feel like they've put it all on the line, which they did, and I'm extremely proud of them for doing that. Standing up, speaking truth to power is not an easy thing to do, but they could see this as a potential, as a way to maybe, I've had enough with this government, I've had enough of the class size, I've had enough, and I'm going to walk away. And I think that's a real tragedy here. We have excellent teachers in Alberta who deserve to be supported by this government, because that is in fact their job to do that. And if the government is unwilling to do that and it causes teachers to leave the profession, that's a shame that the government will have to take.
All right, Mr. Schilling, we have to leave it there for time. Appreciate your time, as always. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.